NESN.com presents The Hurry Up.
Welcome into Week 6 of The Hurry Up. I'm your host, Rachel Holt. Tom Brady is back with a monster performance in Week 5 against the Browns, and if you didn't expect that, then you clearly know nothing about Angry Brady. He threw for 406 yards in a dominant 20-point victory. Yep, he's back all right. But as Bill Belichick would say, it's on to Week 6 against the Bengals. So we're going to send it out to Gillette Stadium with our own Mikhail Vernava and Doug Hyde with more on the 4-1 Patriots. Guys.
Thanks, Rachel. Well, Tom Brady is back in a big way. We saw finally that two tight end set. Lot of production from Rob Gronkowski and Martellus Bennett combined for 11 catches, 176 yards. Bennett, of course, had those 3 touchdowns. It was quite a show, but Doug, you say this is just the tip of the iceberg. So what more can we expect to see?
Yeah, I think that perhaps we could see even more production, and perhaps Tom Brady could be even better this season, and that's kind of crazy to think since Brady just won AFC Offensive Player of the Week. He had the 3 touchdowns, 406 yards, but there were a lot of times when Gronkowski and Bennett were running routes separately, when the other player wasn't on the field or when the other player was kind of held in to block. So I think that they can probably just throw to those guys whenever they want moving forward. If you have both of them on the field, especially if they're on the same side of the field, it's almost impossible for the opposing defense to cover them both. And when they're in man coverage, when the opposing team does not double cover them, Tom Brady can also throw into contested coverage, and those guys will usually pull the ball out. So this is going to be almost impossible for opposing teams to stop. Most teams don't have one player who can cover guys like this. There's no way that teams have 2 players. So those guys are going to go off probably every week this season.
If that was Brady with even a little bit of rust, I am terrified if I'm the rest of the league. But a guy who's not really looking quite himself at all, kicker Steven Gostkowski has missed now 3 field goals in the past 4 games, all wide right. And to put it in context, he only missed 3 field goals all of last season. Doug, what's going on? Should we be worried about him?
Maybe. It kind of started last year in the AFC Championship game when he did miss the extra point, and now it's carried on to this season. I don't think it's time to get worried about it yet per se, just because it is Steven Gostkowski, because he's been one of the best kickers in the NFL for the past 10 years. But there is some cause for concern there. I don't think the Patriots are going to sign anyone else. I don't think they're going to release him. I don't think they will even bring in a guy for a tryout this week. But it is something to monitor moving forward, because sometimes guys just get the yips, and that might be what Steven Gostkowski is going through right now. I think it's just important for him to get those reps, maybe get some reps in the stadium this week, just to get him a little bit more prepared, to get him over whatever is going on in his head right now.
All right, well, thanks, Doug. Now let's send it back to Rachel.
It's hard to believe, but we're roughly getting to the halfway point of many fantasy football leagues, depending on when your playoffs are. I'm joined now by Nick Goss, and Nick, now is the time to make moves if you want your team to be in the playoffs. So let's start with waiver wire targets for Week 6. In the wide receiver position, who are you looking at?
I'm looking at Sammy Coates. We've kind of been waiting for someone to step in the number 2 role at wideout for the Pittsburgh Steelers with Martavis Bryant out for the year with a suspension. Sammy Coates had 6 receptions for 139 yards and 2 touchdowns last week. I think he's someone who can definitely take advantage of Ben's big arm, Ben Roethlisberger. So I think he's definitely a must-add this week.
Okay, in terms of tight ends, it's been hard to find a reliable one. Who are you looking at in Week 6?
Yeah, there hasn't been many consistent tight ends this year, but Hunter Henry, a rookie for the San Diego Chargers. Antonio Gates has been injured, battling an injury, and he's gotten more playing time. Henry has 3 straight games with 60 or more receiving yards, and he has touchdowns in back-to-back games. Not only would I pick him up, but I would start him in most leagues.
My last question for you is Brian Hoyer has been solid, the Chicago Bears quarterback, for the past 3 weeks. He had 400 passing yards nearly in Week 5. Moving forward, is he a reliable guy?
I think he can be. He does have some pretty good weapons. Eddie Royal and Alshon Jeffrey are 2 pretty good receivers. And when you look at quarterbacks, you want consistency. 3 straight games to 300 or more yards, 2 touchdowns and 0 interceptions in those games as well. That's pretty good. So I think Hoyer is definitely a guy you can add, even if he's been a career backup.
I added him in one of my leagues. I was not disappointed. So those are 3 names to look out for. Good luck in your fantasy football leagues. We're going to send it out back to Gillette Stadium with Doug, who's alongside Zach Cox.
Patriots pass rush hasn't really got going so far this season, even though they have a lot of those pieces in place there with Dante Hightower, Chris Long, Rob Nankovich, Jabal Sheard. This might finally be the week that we get to see those guys really go after the quarterback. They faced Tyrod Taylor, who's running threat, so they couldn't really go after him. Last week, the Browns have such a good running game that they had to kind of stack the line against Isaiah Crowell. What do you expect from the Patriots pass rush this week?
Well, I mean, if the first couple games of the Cincinnati Bengals season have told us anything, the pass rush could have a very big game. Andy Dalton he ranks second in the NFL in passing yards, but he is just getting mauled behind that offensive line. It's really kind of a shaky line. They had a very bad game against the Dallas Cowboys. I think this could be a game where the D-line really kind of comes into its own and plays up to its potential.
Yeah, definitely, and they've got a ton of potential there. Even Trey Flowers is a guy that I didn't mention. They can really stack the line with pass rushers and really try to get after Dalton this week. Bengals' biggest threat is A.J. Green there at wide receiver. Bill Belichick was just talking about how his quickness might be his best attribute as far as him being a big receiver who has speed and quickness. Patriots have a number of different options for how they can take on Green, whether that's putting Malcolm Butler alone on him or Logan Ryan with some help over the top. What would you kind of do in this situation?
Yeah, Belichick mentioned A.J. Green's quickness was his top attribute, and then pretty much went on to say that he also has every single other attribute too. A.J. Green is an incredibly dangerous wide receiver, as we all know. He's one of the best in the NFL. We've seen in recent years, though, that the Patriots defense is pretty good at taking away a team's top receiver. We've seen it twice with DeAndre Hopkins right now, seen it with some other teams as well. And with the Bengals probably not having tight end Tyler Eifert this weekend, I think old buddy Brandon LaFell could be a factor in this game. He's having a much better season this year than he did last season.
Definitely, and it is a lot different for the Bengals this week, or at least for the Patriots. Usually you have the big guy and the small guy, and usually Malcolm Butler takes on the small guy, Logan Ryan takes on the big guy. Bengals have two big guys. Brandon LaFell is just as physical as A.J. Green, so it will be very interesting to see how they try to match that up. I think it's probably going to be Logan Ryan with safety help over the top on Green, and then having Butler shut down LaFell. But there's really only one way to find out, and that's by watching Sunday's game.
If you're still alive and kicking in your survivor pool, we're going to try to help you stay that way. I'm joined by Mike Cole now with our lock and upset segment. So Mike, first off, let's start off with what team in week 6 is looking like a sure thing?
That's a good question. I'm going to go with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think the Steelers are one of the best teams in football, and they've got a pretty good matchup this week. They're going to Miami to take on the Dolphins. Dolphins looked terrible last week against Tennessee, which I did pick as my upset last week, I'll mind you.
You did.
The Dolphins are just a mess. Defensively, they're giving up 150 yards per game on the ground. Le'Veon Bell is averaging 5.5 yards per rush since returning. They have allowed opposing quarterback rating of about 101, and obviously the Steelers have one of the best passing attacks in football. And Ryan Tannehill's actually gotten worse under Adam Gase. So it's just, you add it all up, I like the Steelers to cover even that 7.5, 8 point spread.
Ben Roethlisberger very quietly leading the league with touchdowns too. So as far as a upset this week, what team?
I'm going to go to the NFC South, which is a little bit unpredictable. It just seems like all of those teams aren't very good at this point, other than the Falcons. You've got the Carolina Panthers heading to the New Orleans Saints. Panthers are 3-point road favorites as it stands right now. Who knows if that'll change depending on what happens with Cam Newton. But regardless, I still think I like the Saints in this one. That Panthers defense is just terrible right now. It's as bad as it's been in years, really in their entire franchise history. They're on pace to give up more points than they've ever given up in a single season. I like New Orleans bouncing back after a bye. So I think that the Panthers probably make some dumb decision late in the game that costs them, like they can't field a punt or something like that, like we saw on Monday night. So I like the Saints to pull away late, maybe with a late field goal.
Well, according to ESPN stats and info, the Panthers only have a 7% chance of making it into the playoffs. They're 1-4. No one saw this coming.
No, it's not good.
Good luck this week in your survivor pools.
I'm Zach Cox, and here are my NFL Power Rankings for Week 6. The biggest climbers in my Week 6 rankings are the Atlanta Falcons, who won their 4th straight game Sunday and move into the top 10 for the first time all season. Matt Ryan and company lead the NFL in points per game, yards per game, and passing yards per game, and they proved Sunday with their 23-16 victory over the Broncos that they don't necessarily have to score 40 points to secure a win. One team trending in the opposite direction right now is the Cincinnati Bengals, who plummet from number 8 to number 14. Last year's AFC North champs have struggled against quality competition this season, beating the lowly Jets and Dolphins but going 0-3 in games against the Steelers, Broncos, and Cowboys. The Patriots will look to continue that trend when the Bengals visit Gillette Stadium this Sunday. Speaking of the Patriots, they remain atop our rankings after bulldozing the Cleveland Browns on Sunday. Tom Brady threw for 400 yards and 3 touchdowns in his return from suspension, and the Rob Gronkowski-Martellus Bennett tight end duo looks even more dangerous than we anticipated. The road ahead is not easy for the Patriots, however. After their date with the Bengals this weekend, they'll travel to Pittsburgh and Buffalo before hosting the Seattle Seahawks in a Super Bowl 49 rematch.
The name of the game is show and tell. This is where I bring in objects each week and use them to give you a few developing thoughts I have on the 2016 NFL season. First object we're bringing in this week, some good old-fashioned dental floss. Tell you who's not going to be needing this anytime soon. That's the reigning NFC champions. The Carolina Panthers have been absolutely toothless this season. No bite to them whatsoever. 1-4, sitting in last place in the NFC South after a loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Monday night, Week 5. Listen, folks, you can stick a fork in them because I don't think they're going anywhere. Cam Newton's banged up. Defense isn't the same as it was last year. Man, this Panthers team really getting me hot under the collar a little bit. Second object we're going to bring in, this set of keys right here. We're going to hand these to Dak Prescott and say, you know what, buddy? Take over this Dallas Cowboys offense and ride, because it's time to hand the keys to him. Tony Romo, he's going to be back, he's going to be healthy, but I don't think they should be quick to give him the starting job, and I'll tell you why. We've seen the ceiling and the floor with Tony Romo. He might as well be 86 years old. He's 36 years old. I like Romo. I think he's a good quarterback. I think he's a lot better than a lot of the other turd sandwiches across the NFL. Let's usher in a new era for the Cowboys. Maybe cut bait with Rome in the offseason, use that money elsewhere, and have a more well-rounded roster. So we're giving the keys to Prescott. Third object we're bringing in here, it's a bull. And it's a bull that's shaped like a bum. And you know who's a bum right now is Brock Osweiler. All right? This guy signed a $72 million contract in the offseason. And listen, I'll give it to you. The Houston Texans are a respectable 3-2, so it could be worse. And Osweiler played like crap last week against a Vikings team that's been beating up on everyone, so we won't hold that against him too much. But he hasn't been $72 million worth of good. So you know what? The Broncos made a good investment by not giving him the money and relying on the likes of Trevor Siemian and Paxton Lynch. Otherwise, you know, if they shelled out that cash, they would be sitting on a bad contract right now. They're sitting there bums on a bad contract right now. Osweiler, a bum.
Thanks, Ricky. In my opinion, show and tell is always the best part of this show. Thanks for tuning in to Week 6 of the Hurry Up. If you want more fantasy football advice or NFL news, keep it locked on any of our podcasts here. And as always, make sure you check out NESN.com for all of your football news.